Hello guys and welcome back to my channel. Today we are making garlic naan. Let's get into it. We are using some cake flour. You can use normal flour, butter, salt. I'm using instant yeast, some creme fraiche. You can substitute that with plain yogurt, garlic cloves. I'm not going to be using the parsley. I'll use mixed herbs instead. Long life milk and white sugar. You don't have to use long life. You can use normal fresh milk. So starting off with 1/4 cup of warm water, I am adding 1 tablespoon of sugar. I'm using white sugar, but you should be able to use any kind of sugar you have at home. Instant yeast goes in, and I'm using a teaspoon of that. Just gonna stir that until it's fully combined. On a separate cup, we have 1/4 cup of milk that's also warm. I add to that 2.5 tablespoons of creme fraiche. If you are using plain yogurt, you should add 4 tablespoons of the plain yogurt. So I'm just going to stir that together. The warm milk does help the creme fraiche dissolve a bit. If the milk is cold, it'll make this even more difficult than it is right now. After mixing the two together, you add them onto the yeast mixture. This actually activates the yeast immediately. Now for our dry ingredients, that is a full cup of the flour, followed by a teaspoon of salt. Just gonna quickly mix those two together, and that is going to be followed by our wet ingredients that have already been mixed together. So don't pour the whole thing all at once, just pour enough so that it combines well, and you don't want your dough to be too runny. Once our dough is fully combined, flour the flat surface that you're going to be using to knead on, and just transfer your dough onto the surface. Okay, so this is where you start kneading. Make sure that your surface is really well floured. Be generous with it, especially if your dough seems a bit, wet and sticky. The flour will help you. So you take quite a long time to mix this together, and the way you know that it has actually been kneaded pretty well is when it stops sticking to your hands and becomes a more elastic mixture. So the process is to knead using the back of your hand. Don't know if that makes any sense. Basically, put your weight in it in the motion that you see here with me. This activates the gluten and is the reason this bread is chewy. Once the texture of the dough is stretchy and doesn't stick anymore, we grease a bowl so that the dough doesn't get stuck to it while it is left to rise for at least an hour and a half. You can close this by using a cling wrap or just the lid of the bowl you're working with. After an hour and a half, as you can see, my dough is nearly at the top of my bowl, properly risen. Now we start rolling out our dough into the oblong shape of your naan. Always flour your surface that you're gonna work on, and then transfer the dough onto the floured surface. As you can see, did not get stuck at all because of the fact that we had oiled our bowl. Now we equally split the dough into pieces that will translate into the pieces of naan that we're gonna make. So I tried to make them equal. I ended up with just 5 naans. So you just roll it into a ball. That always helps with getting the proper shape out. And then make sure that your surface is properly floured. Flour your hands as well, that always helps. Then using a rolling pin, I'm just gonna roll it out until it's the desired shape. The typical shape for naan is more oval or oblong. It's not necessarily circular, and that's why I am trying to replicate that traditional shape of naan here. So once I'm happy with the size and the thickness of my dough, I use melted butter. I melted about 4 tablespoons of butter, and I didn't put anything on there, so I just brushed the butter onto my dough. My pan wasn't oiled because my dough is already brushed with butter. I make sure that I don't turn it around too many times because then you want to get those nice bubbles rising and the color imprinting on the bottom bit of the naan. So when it's ready, you turn it over. This is a bit pale for me actually. Make sure your heat is on high for this process because you want quite a bit of color on the naan. When it's pale, it doesn't look as nice as you've seen my previous one. Moving on, we've got 3 tablespoons of butter in a ramekin, and then to that we add the 3 cloves of garlic that are minced fine. We also add half a teaspoon of the mixed herbs that I'm using. These are dry mixed herbs that I'm using. I melt that in a microwave oven and then come and brush my fresh bread with it while it's still hot. You don't wait for the bread to cool down before you brush this because you want it to really get in there and be soaked in the garlic butter basically. So as my bread comes out of the pan, I immediately brush it with the garlic butter that has some herbs in it. If you have fresh herbs, which I didn't have, you should use them. I would prefer coriander for this process. So if you have fresh coriander, you can mince it fine and also use it in this garlic butter as opposed to the dry herbs that I have used. So that's it guys, as easy as that. You've got very good naan. One that actually rivals some restaurants that I've gone to. So this is my final product. I really hope you get to try this because it was delicious. I impressed myself too on this one. As mentioned, your bread should be nice and chewy. And that's it guys. Please remember to like, to comment, and turn on notifications for my channel.